It's very much of an honor and privilege for me to be sitting here with Robert Bednarik, who is a friend of mine. We've known each other since about 2002. And when I tell people about you, which is quite often, I introduce you as probably one of, if not the foremost rock art researchers in the whole world. And I go on to say that before you were grounded by COVID, that you spent a lot of your time traveling, setting up rock art institutes for the governments of India, China, Saudi Arabia, and stuff like that. And so, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're known for your work in rock art, but your actual specialty is cognitive archaeology, but you're really an epistemologist. So did I get all that right?
Yes, you got it pretty right. As far as the cognitive archaeology is concerned, I probably coined the term a long time ago, but I don't think I'm all that happy with it today or with the way it is being used today.
Well, has it been compromised or appropriated by others?
Yes, of course. It's applied to all sorts of things that I would never include. For instance, there is this emphasis on shamanism in rock art,
yes,
which I totally disagree with.
Yes.
It has nothing to do with cognitive archaeology. Cognitive archaeology was intended by me to be about the early cognition of people,
yes,
of humans.
And correct me if I'm wrong, also, and at least the peripheral aspect of your work involves the cognitive processes of the archaeologist himself, right? In the sense of how they perceive things.
Well, that could also be included, but the bottom point, the bottom line is essentially, as you said, in the final analysis, I'm really an epistemologist.
And
an epistemologist.
Yes, and as I understand it, that's one of the major branches of philosophy, the others being
yes, of course.
Ontology and metaphysics. And so epistemology has to do with the origins of knowledge, or what we consider to be important.
It basically means how do we get to know the things that we think we know?
The way you said that is very important, that we think we know.
Yes.
So can you give a sort of a definitive definition of knowledge? Does that imply certainty or some kind of external verification? Yeah. If you're not sure of it, then it's not really knowledge, right?
Certainty we will never have. We're only human. And that limits us very severely. I think the best way to explain it is by starting to explain how I see the world. I believe that every human being that has ever existed has a unique construct of reality. And all those constructs between those billions and billions of people are different. There are no two humans on this planet that have exactly the same idea about reality. And the reason is very simple. Our concept of reality comes about through our life experiences. It's even before we are born. We experience certain inputs, and we create our own world from those inputs. Now, quite clearly, there are no two people with exactly the same life experiences.
Even identical twins.
Any, of course, because each person has a different set of experiences. They come at different times, in different forms, and so on. And the end result is that we have some sort of a framework within which we see ourselves existing in reality. And that's fine.
Would you say that
but we need to understand that all those constructs are different.
Yes. Well, and sort of, would you say that applies sort of at the individual and at sort of the social and collective levels as well?
Well, obviously, if two people belong to the same culture and have a very similar life experience, roughly. Like, let's say, for instance, a person that grows up in a Western culture, for instance, with certain expectations and certain ideas. In the present time, they would share many, probably most of their concepts. But if you compare a person that lives in a Western society today with a person that lived 30,000 years ago in France, you're going to get enormous differences.
Yes.
And that is a big problem in archaeology. Archaeologists project their present world onto those early people,
Which
without
may or may not work.
justification. It cannot be. We can't expect it to work.
Well, it's hard. It's probably possible to get beyond that to a degree if you're aware of it.
Well, if you have the relevant skepticism, and I think I do, at least I'm trying very hard to have such skepticism, then you have to reject most of those interpretations.
Yes.
For instance, the interpretation of rock art. Most of the works that has been published over the past 200 years about rock art deals with interpretation. And why is that? It's because every person, including myself, every person that goes to a rock art site looks at the rock art and says, what does it mean?
Well, and it's instinctive.
Whether it's a child or a rock art tourist or an archaeologist or any other kind of scholar, this is the first question that we ask.
Well, would you say that's because it's so because it's obvious that it strikes you as having been important to the people to go to all that trouble to make it?
That's right. We instinctively think it's some sort of a message to us, which of course is pretty silly when you think about it. Why should the Stone Age person 30,000 years ago have wanted to make a message to us in the 21st century?
Exactly, but I was thinking about what you might call the time binding aspect of recording and the rock art, which might be the first things that humans recorded, is because they did want it to last for a long time. Would that be is that?
No, not at all.
Not
Not
so?
at all. No. For this very simple reason, it would be very foolish to assume that cave art was the only rock art produced at that time. The fact is that cave art is the only rock art that was able to survive for 30,000 years. So the connection between the cave and the art is artificial.
Yes.
It's what we call a taphonomic result. It results from taphonomy, from the selective survival of the evidence.
Yes, like fossils. Fossils show us the ones that were fossilized, but not all the ones that weren't.
Of course.
Very interesting. Well, that touches on an important. I'm just trying to cover some of the main points. As I understand it, you don't involve yourself so much with interpreting or discerning the meaning of stuff, but you determine their authenticity and accurate dating. Is that correct?
That's quite correct. Dating, I've been involved in dating for several decades, since 1980. So that's about 43 years. And as far as authenticity is concerned, that has become one of my major interests in recent years, in the last, 5 or 8 years or so, because I realized that enormous numbers of mistakes have been made in authenticating rock art, in actually demonstrating that it is made by humans and not a natural rock marking.
Well, and isn't there a word that describes something that's natural that looks like it's artificial? I thought it was one of those interesting Greek words or something.
No, in the case of stone tools, we have a word. We call them eolith. Eolith.
Eolith.
Yes. These are supposed stone artifacts of the Pliocene. In other words, 2-3 million years old. the argument about them has been going for a long time, since about 1880, in fact, and we know today. Well, here you are. Here you have a real problem in archaeology. In the 1850s, there was a huge argument in France about the stone tools that were being excavated by Boucher de Perth and other people. And the archaeologists banded together, held a conference in Paris in 1858, with the conclusions that all of the stones that these people have been collecting are worthless pebbles. And that was a very silly thing to say, because they didn't know that at the time 2 British geologists were working alongside the same trench to test the claims.
Yes.
Which is exactly what a good scientist does.
Yes.
He tests claims. That's why every proposition in science has to be testable. Otherwise, it's not a scientific proposition. So they were taking alongside at the same time as these archaeologists condemned the whole story. And there you are. Great disappointment.
Well, there might have been people that said, well, look, these are clearly the tools that were used by the Piltdown man.
Well, we can see today, I mean, they were hand axes. They couldn't have been manufactured
that long
naturally.
ago.
They couldn't have been manufactured naturally to the same template every time. You
Yes.
know? So quite clearly, the involvement of people was quite clearly demonstrated. But the archaeologists didn't accept it at all.
Very interesting.
Totally rejected it. Just as they rejected the discovery of cave art a couple of decade later, the discovery of Neanderthal man,
Yep.
in other words, the first fossil man, was completely rejected for 40 years.
Well, you use the example of Alfred, is it pronounced Wegener, the plate tectonics guy. Nobody would believe
No,
him.
Wegener was not involved in that.
Okay.
No.
Very
No.
interesting. Well, let me ask you this. So, rock art, studying the authentic old rock
The
art.
authenticity, the fact that it was actually made, that the rock marking was made by a human,
Yes.
has developed into one of my principal interests.
But that's very interesting because, see, but before I always thought, when I thought of authenticity, I went like, well, is it really made by the people they say made it and when they made it?
Well,
but you're
that's a
saying,
matter
is it even human origin?
Yes. Oh, yes, of course.
Well, see-
And there are thousands of examples worldwide of rock markings that are clearly made naturally. They're made by various agents.
Yes.
But the archaeologists believed that they were made by humans. And
Yes.
if you tell them that no, they weren't, they're quite upset about it.
Yes. Well, look, this is an interesting little tangent here, because could there be a continuum of what it actually is? I mean, is it like the meaning is in the eye of the beholder? So whatever somebody looks at, they're going to see the meaning they want, whether it's natural or artificial.
Yeah.
Or
Well, you see, some of these natural markings really do look very much like petroglyphs.
Yes.
This is true. But if you are familiar with the methodologies that I use, then there is no great difficulty separating the sheep from the goat.
yes. Well, and this would be another word that you really enlightened me about. The true meaning of it is the word forensic. You use a lot of forensic techniques, and can you elaborate on exactly what that means in this context?
Well, I would go beyond forensics. Forensics was in vogue for me about 10 or 20 years ago. Now I'm much more into tribology, which has nothing to do with tribes.
Or trilobites. What is that?
Or trilobites. No, tribology is a science that was founded only recently in 1965. and it deals with the interaction between surfaces in relative motion. In other words, this is tribology.
So this is a mechanism by which some of these natural-looking markings might have been formed, right?
It's real science in the sense that it's not something that was dreamed up in the 18th or 19th century.
Yep.
But was decided quite deliberately along scientific means, along scientific lines.
You're analyzing the way that a lot of rock art was made, right?
That's right. It's about what happens when two surfaces are in contact and one affects the other.
Now, does this include not only pecking and etching, but also painting?
I'm just working on a book that's called Archaeology, which is a word that I've coined myself
Yes.
and published it only about 2 or 3 years ago. Archaeology demonstrates that all artifacts of the Pleistocene, of the Ice Age, and of the first half of the subsequent Holocene, in other words, all stone tools, all tools, not just stone tools, all tools and all artifacts that were made up to 6,000 years ago were made by tribology. They were carved or drilled or engraved or whittled or whatever. But they were made by one of these processes where one tool is involved in removing material from another tool.
That's
So
very,
it's a matter of tribology. It's obvious.
yes,
But no archaeologist has ever seen it from that direction.
yes.
So that puts me way ahead of the competition.
Exactly. You're maybe even outside of their galaxy. But what I wanted to ask you, if as an epistemologist, if you're investigating the origins of knowledge, and you were interested in rock art per se, but I was going to ask, that's clearly you can sort of understand why that would be of interest. But like you're saying now that the study of the other artifacts and stuff, my question was, what other ways could you investigate the origins of knowledge other than through something that was recorded or and implements that were made?
Well, it's a bit difficult with the origins of knowledge because it depends on what you mean with knowledge.
Yes. And the cupules, is that how you say it? Those little peckings?
Cupules.
Isn't that some of the oldest human-made things that you found?
At present, cupules form 99% of the world's oldest rock art.
Well, can you give a guess as to what motivation would have been to make that? I'm not using the M word. Meaning.
Yeah, of course. I once wrote a paper listing all of the interpretations of cupules that have ever been published. And I came up with 77 different explanations.
Really?
Most of them are complete nonsense.
So was there a woolly mammoth in there? No, I'm just kidding.
So some of them are sensible, but very, very few, maybe 2 or 3, are derived from ethnography. And the rest is just dreaming.
Yes. Well, now, let me ask you, slightly pulling back and looking slightly sideways, what's the difference between a picture and a symbol in the sense of things that people make?
A symbol is something that has a referent. It refers to something.
Yes. And so,
and normally, well, not always, but normally it's non-iconic.
Yes.
It could be something like a number or a symbol, you know.
So do you? I know
it's a pretty loose term, actually.
Exactly, and I'm trying to move towards a little more firmer kind of look at it. But it's like to talk about rock art. That's vast. All the different kinds, and different kind of motifs and stuff like that. But would you say that rock art, as you perceive it, is what percent is pictographic and what percent symbolic, if any? And then what other sort of
what percentage is ethnographic?
No, pictographic. Pictographic. It's like some like clearly looks like a picture of a kangaroo or a sea turtle. At least that to my eye. But then other ones are just sort of like they're almost like symbols from a language. This is me projecting my need for meaning on it. But
there are significant problems with the terminology.
Yes.
A pictograph in America is a rock art motif that has been applied with paint. It's a rock painting. Rock painting would be a synonymous word.
Regardless of what it's of, it's just
the problem with it is that the word pictograph actually refers to a writing symbol that has an iconic content.
Like Chinese.
Like a hieroglyph.
Yes.
Okay? So, the International Federation of Rock Art Organizations introduced another word, which is pictogram, for a painting.
Yep.
Now, let me rephrase the word painting. For a rock art motif that has been made by applying some substance to a rock surface, like a painting or a stencil, a hand stencil, or something like that. Whereas a petroglyph was made by a reductive method. Something was taken away from the rock.
Yep.
So it can be a finger marking on very soft rock in a cave, or it can be a percussion petroglyph, or it can be an engraving, or a scratching.
Yes.
Anything removing material from the rock.
Yes. And that ties in with that's tribological.
Well, that's a very, very sensible division for the simple reasons that rock paintings and petroglyphs are studied by very different methodologies.
Yes, and again, this is the pragmatic approach of looking at how they're different,
exactly.
Differently how they're made, not difference in what they might mean.
Exactly.
Or some assuming is it wrong to say that these things we can assume that they had meaning for the people?
Oh, there's no doubt that they had
but not
meaning,
that we can ever understand.
But we cannot know what they meant, and if we can speculate about it forever, it would make no difference.
And that's what all these people, all the books are about. All those your myths and fairy tales.
The problem is very simple in an epistemological sense. These are speculations that are not testable.
Yes.
They're not falsifiable. They're just claims. I believe it's such and such.
Yes.
And I believe it depicts hunting or childbirth or whatever,
But that sells books.
That's how
especially if it's got nice photography.
Unfortunately,
but it's not science.
It has led nowhere. This is why in rock art research you have so many arguments about differences of opinions about interpretations.
And they argue about the interpretations.
Yes.
Well, now let me. I've asked you about this before, and I'm treading gently because I don't want to even draw you into thinking that I want you to share knowledge that you might have been shared that was never meant to go beyond you. But what I wanted to sort of ask about is in sort of a generalized insight into how maybe some of the indigenous people here, maybe like say in the Pilbara, how they interacted with their rock art. Like would they go and sit with it, or did they like sort of read it or say it or sing it, or but they didn't sort of like was it the rock art itself that they put their energy into, or what it symbolized or meant, or how did they use it, or do we have any idea?
As far as we know, there were different reasons for creating rock art by Australian Aborigines. As far as I can see, about 1/3 of the rock art is sacred or secret. In other words, we don't talk about it at all.
Yes.
The other 2/3 are not, or not very much. and can be seen by children and by women. And of course, there's also women's art, which should not be seen, cannot be seen by men.
Yes.
What we've witnessed the production of rock art in quite a number of cases in this country.
Yes.
And it's the only country where that has happened in a reasonable number of instances.
That answered another one of my questions about rock art of today. And you said there are, I asked you before if only fully initiated people would be authorized to create art.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And you said mainly, but not necessarily. I think that's what you said. And,
Yes, not mainly, that's right. I've myself witnessed the production of rock art, and in fact I was the person that saw the last known production of a petroglyph.
And where was that? Was this in the Pilbara?
That was in the Pilbara.
Yes.
Yes.
Were you allowed to be in on it, what it was for, or the ceremony, or what it meant? I'm not asking you to share it.
The artist told me what it means. Yes.
Is that something you can share?
No.
Okay.
But what I can say is that the image that he created in a very short time, 10, 15 minutes or so, the image that he created, it looks totally non-figurative to a European.
Like an abstract, kind of like a symbol or something.
But when it is explained to you what it means, it becomes obvious. But it's not something that an archaeologist would be able to guess by looking at it for 1,000 years.
Is there a way?
I'll give you another example. Mount Ford, an ethnographer from South Australia, was the only person that ever witnessed the production of cupules in Australia, and that was in the Northern Territory. And he published the explanation, although the book is restricted. Actually, it was pulped because some of the things that it contained were
not supposed to be shared.
Not supposed to be there. Nevertheless, he did explain what the true meaning of the cupules was, and it turns out that you would not in 1,000 years guess it.
Is that something that you could share with me?
Yes, it's sort of published, and it's been discussed in the literature, so it's not very secret.
Do you think this applies to all of them, or just these certain ones?
No, just this particular site.
What was it?
It's an increased site, which means that when you create rock art at that site, in this case hammering cupules,
yes,
you create dust. The dust is supposed to fertilize a particular species. And increases its number.
Well, but I was going to ask you about this. Scott Virtue, when I met them, she was telling me that when I went out to that place called Middle Creek, and went out there, there's a whole like a kilometer long wall of all these. It looks like stuff from many different eras to my eye. But she said that it terminated at what she called an increase site.
Oh, yes.
And I was never sure. I've got a photograph of what I thought, but it was a long row of a whole bunch of little things like that. And I don't know if that was what she was talking about. Well, I can't comment.
I haven't seen it. All I can say is that increased sites are known from various parts of the country. It's not a great secret.
Yes. But it's the dust. The dust was going to go in
that particular case.
Yes.
I wouldn't extrapolate from that to every other site.
Yes, but that's very interesting because one of my questions also was going to be about why they painted on the rock. And first of all, you go, because it was there. So they didn't have paper or not many trees wouldn't last in the rock because it was there. But the metaphysician in me wants to say, well, they know that every living thing is made from rock. Ultimately, we're the body of Mother Earth. So maybe it was kind of like a sacred connection of some kind. And is that reaching too far?
Well, I don't know.
But that would make sense of like the dust of the rock going
Yes,
out.
but don't forget that increased sites don't necessarily involve dust. Increase could be not just an animal species, it could be a tree.
Yes.
It could be head lice, bring a plague of head lice on your enemies.
Yes.
Anything,
Yes.
It just means increasing something.
Well, see, now I have an even bigger question. Did it work? Did the increase sites, did that technique work? Or did they hope that it did, or was it ever measurable? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but we I mean we know almost nothing about all of this.
But see, this is what I was going to say. In terms of it's almost like we're talking with you. It's kind of like we're almost defining by elimination all that we don't know. And I'm going like, based on the stuff that is known that can't be shared, but there may be this region on the giant Venn diagram of just what we can't know at all, and then that might be the most important stuff of all.
That could well be the case.
That we can't even imagine what it is and what's in their mind, and not that it was the same for everybody.
That's precisely what I mean when I say that humans are very, very limited in their abilities.
Well, and so how about this? Are we different? We've talked about this before. Are we different from everybody else on the earth, or is it just in our own mind? Because
different from animals, you mean?
Yeah, because I think you told me before, you got like, no, we're not really. Other animals do all the same stuff we do, like ants build, and birds sing, and
Sure.
all this different kind of stuff. But would your answer be any different now?
No. As a matter of fact, I would probably reinforce what I've said in the past with details such as there are many animal species that have a theory of mind. So
elaborate. Elaborate on that.
Well, elephants, for instance, whales, the other primates, The point being that theory of mind, which was supposed to be limited to humans, is not limited to humans. And theory of mind is easily tested with the paint test.
Does that have to do with self-awareness?
Self-awareness, that's right.
Very interesting.
So all of these special abilities of humans are not limited to humans. In my experience, there's very little that separates us completely from animals.
So it's just we're part of a continuum.
Yes, of course it is.
But in our psyche, there's a huge gap between us and everybody else.
Yeah.
But how did that come to be?
Well, it's got to do with our brain.
Is that neural? Is it because our brain is shrinking?
No, it's because the brain first grew a lot. The brain grew constantly throughout the Pleistocene and even in the Pliocene, and it kept increasing. It's called encephalization, which is the increase in the volume of the brain to about 3 times the size it used to be. But as you correctly indicated, about 30,000 years ago, 40,000 years ago, it began to shrink, and it's been shrinking since then at a speed 37 times greater than it grew before. In other words, it's rapidly dwindling.
Well, is it from disuse, or is it the fact that the Earth is not happy with the fact that we've used it as the most advanced weapon system we can come up with?
Well, I've explained why I think this has happened, but it's a bit too complex.
We've domesticated ourselves.
That's
it's
right,
like a feedback,
yes.
a feedback with our own artificial reality.
Also, domesticated species have a brain smaller than the wild variant.
Well, see, now look, just as a tangent, tie this in with the current explosion in AI and artificial intelligence and computers and all that stuff. And so people are so obsessed with that. But I go like, all computers are, all that stuff, no matter how advanced the programming, it's just an externalization of a very tiny subset of sort of a left hemisphere kind of cognitional, rational decision making and stuff like that. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, that's
so
a fair comment.
Is the externalization of our own psyche into a machine? That's almost like a furthering of the shrinking process, isn't it?
Yeah.
Very interesting. Well, now here's a big question. Would you consider yourself a behaviorist in the traditional sense of behaviorism, or a materialist, as opposed to, with the sort of the non-local effect telepathic paradigm?
No, I'm afraid with these peg holes, I'm not very happy with them.
No, but
I mean, take the word materialist. Materialist, it has two totally different meanings.
And what are they? What would those be?
Well, materialist, like a materialist person,
Oh, yeah, in the sense of possessions and stuff.
Yeah.
No, I don't mean like that. I meant like, but it's like, to me, behaviorism.
It's a word that's very loosely used.
Yes.
And it doesn't mean terribly much.
Forgive my imprecision. I guess what I'm getting at is because I've used the example, and I think in all our interviews I keep bringing this up because it was so interesting to me. The story of when. Is it okay to say your friend's name, the elder who you knew so well?
What was that?
Is it okay to say his name, the elder in the Pilbara who took you out to the rock site?
Yeah.
Uncle Monty. And you said the first time he took you out to this very sacred site that maybe no white man had ever seen, you said he was walking in front of you, waving a stick, addressing some kind of being that maybe he saw, but you didn't see, but he was asking its permission for you to be there safely.
That's right, yeah.
And so, but
that's normal. That's normal Aboriginal behavior.
But was he actually seeing something?
I don't know.
Well, but this is what I'm getting at. See, the behaviorist paradigm would say, oh, of course not. He just thought he was. But then the metaphysical side would go like, well, who knows? I mean, I wasn't seeing through his eyes, but then I tie this in because these stories it rung with me. You told me about the woman researcher who was warned, possibly by him, to not ever go to these places alone because they might be in danger from spirit or the guardians. And she went, and she didn't come back for 3 days, and he had to go and rescue her, and she lost her mind and was never able to hold a job down again. And I asked you and you said, Jeff, you and I both know that was only because she believed.
That's right.
And you still stand by that.
Yes. Sure.
But is the Aboriginal belief in spirit and like the rainbow serpent and stuff, is that just beyond our ken, or is it real, or can something be physically real to somebody but not to other people?
In my observation, it is very real to the Aboriginal person.
Yes.
Aboriginal people, when they go to sacred site, believe that there are spirits all over the place. They certainly sense them.
Yes. Yes. But would those same spirits be sensible by us?
Well, not to me.
But I think I feel it. I think I sense it. I feel like the rainbow serpent is a real being that I've actually seen. You guided me. You guided me through you first told me many years ago that you thought, when I asked you what was the most powerful place on earth, because you would know, and you instantly said the Pilbara. And when I was there last year, I go like, Robert, within the Pilbara, is there any very special places, A, that I would be spiritually authorized to go, and B, that I had a chance of physically getting there that might be really special? And you instantly said some of these water holes at Wittenoom Gorge. And because of your guidance, I did. I was able to get in touch with 3 different Aboriginal people, one of which grew up in Wittenoom. Yeah, and he knew exactly the water hole to send me to, and I went there. I sent you some of the water from there.
Yeah, no.
And to me, Man, that was one of the most magic experiences of my life. When I got in that water, I could not get out. And I felt, and this is my mind, I felt like that I was in touch with anywhere there was water in the galaxy. In that water hole, I was in touch with it. It was that powerful of a thing, and it zapped me. It sent me to the next level of all the magic stuff that started happening to me after that. I mean, this is kind of like, this is the Australia that I travel in, you know, and it's a very powerful magic place. What does the rainbow serpent mean to you? What is to you? What does it mean to them?
Well, we know what it means to the Aboriginal people. It's a creator of the world.
Yes.
And possibly it's a destroyer.
Yes. Yes. It can. Yes. Well, and this, now we're moving towards part 2 of this interview, because if the rainbow serpent is the sort of embodiment of a guardian being that's supposed to be the protector of the land and the life forms and the people and stuff, and also the Maori have a name called a kaitiaki. Kaitiaki, a kaitiaki. It means a guardian or a protector. And all the mining that's going on, especially there in the Pilbara and all over Australia and everywhere in the world, you know, this is the rainbow serpent happy with all this, and with the people that should be opposing it but aren't.
It's outside my expertise, I'm afraid.